Another one is called Ariel Sharon, and he's just become the Prime Minister of Israel, and he was held correctly by Israel's own inquiry into the Sabra and Shatila massacre of 1982. The inquiry was 83. Said he was held personally responsible for those war crimes. I said, when you put Rifat al-Assad of Syria and Ariel Sharon of Israel in your tribunal, when you prosecute all war criminals, not just the ones you choose for me, then I'll go and talk about Popovich.
You have right.
And the moment I mentioned Ariel Sharon, he didn't want to talk anymore.
Yes.
The Israeli name switched it off. Suddenly, all his threats, all his pomposity disappeared like that. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing?
It's just, it's happening. So what do you think about Bosnia now, today?
I haven't been there for a long time. I went back there after the war, and I've been back to... I was in Serbia for the Kosovo War, driving all over Serbia and Kosovo. And I went back there after the war. But I haven't been back to Bosnia for 6-7 years now, so it's the wrong question to ask me.
So,
when I next go back, then you can ask me.
Okay, so you also was in Kosovo. They are now, separated.
I know.
And what do you think about that?
We're going to regret it later on.
Really?
We already are regretting it because of Georgia.
Yeah.
The Russians turned around and said, well, you want Kosovo, we want Georgia. We want South Ossetia. This was what happened. Effectively, the British told the Russians, the Americans did, we're going to support an independent Kosovo. The Russians were upset for obvious reasons. So now we decided we're going to support Georgia, and the Russians told us what they thought of us by staying and taking over effectively South Ossetia and so on. Well, that's partly because of Kosovo. Maybe they would have done it anyway, I don't know. But the problem in Kosovo is when, first of all, we said we were going to have a war against the Yugoslavs because they wouldn't agree with the Rambouillet agreement, even though that included that NATO would have to have freedom to move on all the railways, roads, TV stations of Yugoslavia, of the Serb part of Yugoslavia. And then the war began, and the army had warned, if there's a war, the Kosovars will suffer and be driven from their home. And they were driven from their homes, in their tens of thousands. Then we said we're fighting the war to get them back into their homes, even though most of them were in their homes when the war began. And so we went on and on and on. And we did not liberate the people. We bombed and bombed until, while they went on ethnically cleansing all the Kosovars and murdering and mass graving them, killing them in mass graves, we didn't enter. Our soldiers were so precious to us. Our soldiers' lives were so important, our Western soldiers. We didn't go to rescue them. We waited until they gave up, and then we went in. And when we went in, we did not protect the Gypsies, and we did not protect the Serbs. We did not. We watched, and I saw British soldiers watching Serb civilians fleeing in panic. And I knew, as soon as they reached the river, they'd say, this is our bit of Kosovo, Mitrovica. Immediately. I said, it's not going to work. You're creating a divided independent country. And we play with people. I think, looking back now, I was sort of dimly aware of it at the time, but looking back now, I think that one of the reasons for the Kosovo War was to create precedents. We bombed roadways, we bombed motorway bridges, we bombed the railway bridge, we bombed the train to Thessaloniki twice, passenger trains, we bombed the hospital. I'm talking about the railway bridge at Surdulica. We bombed the radio station in Belgrade. And looking back now, I think we were deliberately creating military precedents which were human rights abuses. You're not supposed to bomb hospitals, whatever the reason. We created the precedent for the invasion of Iraq in 2003, when we did exactly the same. When we bombed motorways, we bombed motorway bridges, we bombed trains, and we bombed hospitals. And the moment you said, but you can't, well, we did it in Kosovo, you didn't object then, you see? Now, I can see from a nationalist point of view, Serb nationalist, Bosnian nationalist, whatever, I can see why Kosovo happened. But from a longer perspective, and as a correspondent, I'm the Ottoman correspondent, so I cover the whole of what was the caliphate of the Ottomans. I think there were other things involved in the Yugoslav war. It was also to test weapons. I remember sitting on the balcony of my hotel. I wasn't with other journalists. I lived in an old hotel made of wood, right in the very centre of old Belgrade. And I remember standing on the balcony, and there'd been a big raid. The whole place smelled of smoke and wood smoke everywhere. a lot of raids by NATO. And I was standing there with a friend of mine, and we were drinking Schlivovitz on the balcony, and I was talking about, how as a historian journalist I would like to have covered Dunkirk, Arnhem, Stalingrad, the fall of Berlin, And up the street came a cruise missile, and it got to the end of the street, and at the traffic lights it turned right and went up and hit the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And my companion turned to me and said, "Well, Robert, you always wanted to report World War II, and now you are. You're in a Central European city under air attack, and this is what you wanted to do." But I think it was to try out weapons as well, test weapons. I think the war in Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel was to test Iranian weapons and test new American weapons through the arms of Hezbollah and Israel, of course.
When you said on a conference that somehow in Bosnia starting war against Muslim, not starting.
Did I say this just now, this morning?
You said this morning you show a picture from Bosnia, and you said that you felt that somehow.
Oh, sorry. Yes. I showed a picture of me entering a mosque, which had just been destroyed in a village called Chela, which is south of Prijedor. Later recaptured at the end of the war by the Bosnians, but when I went there, I had been there before and met the Imam, and I went back a year later, almost today, and as you saw on that piece of film, which extraordinarily was filmed on the 11th September 1992, just 9 years out, as I walked into that mosque, I actually say, when I see things like this, I remember the Middle East where I work. And when Muslims react, we call it terrorism. But when I see things like this, the blown-up mosque in Chela, I ask what the Muslim world has in store for us. Yeah. Those are the words I used on the soundtrack. And it's there. You've seen that film. It's a much younger Robert Fisk with